Greetings everyone and welcome back to 365 Days of Prog. Today we're gonna be reviewing Ambrosia by the band Ambrosia.
Hi, my name's Naomi. I'm an avid progressive rock fan, but I'm a long ways from knowing all the prog albums out there. But this year, I'm gonna give it a try. This is 365 Days of Prog.
Can you see I have a scratch on here? It's been bothering me all day. I have no idea what it's from. Honestly, I just woke up like this. Anyway, this is Ambrosia by Ambrosia, their self-titled debut album, and let's get right into it with some of my favorite bits from this album.
Relax and forget about what's to be done. It's time to have fun. Hold it on to yesterday.
So coming out in 1974, this album was basically an answer to the success and rising of progressive music in the early 70s. Ambrosia was formed and they wanted to create something which was going with the times, as you might say, so they created this very interesting progressive rock album. Now, unfortunately or fortunately, Ambrosia is probably not a band that we're gonna meet on this list or on the series any more times because their path was laid in creating different types of music, mostly contemporary music of the 70s and the 80s. And you might actually know Ambrosia from songs that hit the top charts in the 70s and the 80s. For example, you've got the 1978 How Much I Feel or the 1980s Bigger Part of Me. Both of them songs which I knew from beforehand, but honestly didn't really ever think much about them, but yes, they're very popular even till this day. But when it comes to being progressive, there's no traces of it. You wouldn't even tell that these guys ever did anything close to progressive and not even think about the fact that they actually created an entire progressive album which is genuinely quite good. And you know, it's not like they had any major member changes like the Soft Machine that really made their sound transform. It's just the same guys but deciding to do different types of music, and you know what, I'm cool with that. It's pretty fine. I think it's really nice that they, you know, shifted their sound to something else, because after all, prog music was created because some people decided to shift their sound to something else. And I think for this album today, I have 3 words that can really describe it quite well, and we're gonna go through all of them. So the words are simple, colorful, and surprising. Let's go through each and every one of them. So firstly, simple. Most of the songs on this album have a pretty simple structure. That's quite surprising if you listen to them, but if you actually delve into it, you'll realize that there's not a lot going down under. But the thing that's really interesting is what is layered on top of it. You see, they take this really simple motif at the start of each song, and then they just build upon it with a lot of different ideas, instruments, sounds, and energies. That's a lot of the thing with this album. There's a lot of energy put into the music. Sometimes it's calmer, sometimes it's heavier, sometimes it's, you know, cheery, and that's a part of the thing that I really like about this one. It just takes a very simple idea and puts all the progressive means on it to create something which is grander. And seeing as lyrics is not the greatest suit of this band and this album in particular, usually opting to sing the name of the song, maybe some more lyrics than that, but most songs usually stick to instrumentals. I really like that, and I really like the way that they use it to create something more creative, more fluid, more rich in sound. And that brings me to my second point: colorful. Usually when talking about color in music, what I at least mean to say is how versatile, how vibrant, and how, deep the music goes in the shade of how it sounds. I'm being pretty metaphorical, but what I mean by that is basically how can you use sound to create different ideas and different, feelings in some way. And there's so many instruments used on here, I couldn't count how many, because a lot of them just appear and disappear quickly, but they add their own zing to the music, and I really like that. Now the funny thing is, the band are credited for a measly amount of instruments. Everyone's credited, for someone's credited for the drums, someone's credited for the guitar, but honestly there's so many instruments on here, I can't even tell you why that is and why it's not credited. But you've got anything from xylophones to whistles to whatever appearing on this album, and I really appreciate it. And yes, it goes back to my point, there's some simple motive, but it is built upon with so many creative and colorful ideas that the songs really feel full of life, very vibrant, and very hooky. Is hooky a word? I don't know, but like hook-like. And thirdly, surprising. I love surprising progressive music. I always love being surprised by the music. I hate it when things are so expected all the times, and that's a part of my disdain with neo-prog. Stay tuned for tomorrow's episode, because I'm gonna have yet another rant about why I don't like neo-prog, so I'm not gonna open that Pandora's box right now. But this album seems to always have something interesting up its sleeve, waiting to be unleashed at the listener at every single point. You really don't know what's coming behind any turn on here, and honestly, I love this unexpectedness. I think it makes the music very fresh, very vibrant, very lovely, and very surprising. And yes, I like my music surprising. Sometimes I listen to things which are, more conventional, more structured, but honestly, when I usually like things, it's because they're really unexpected. So even a track like Mama Frog, which kind of drags in the beginning, really surprised me when the storyteller voice came in, and this became this story time, drone sounds, ambient music kind of song, which I was not expecting by any means, and I really enjoyed that. And I think that one is specifically the more experimental and odder tune on here, but honestly each and every song on here is so good, and I immediately listened to this album yet again right after listening to it the first time, because I was too blown away by how creative it went. And honestly, I think this album is pretty great. That is to say, it doesn't mean it only has perfect tracks. It does have some perfect tracks which I really liked, and my personal favorite was actually Holding On To Yesterday. I really like that song. I think it has a very different approach rather than the rest of the songs on this album, but I really like it. I can listen to it on replay for so many times, I can only see myself doing it. And generally I find that this album sort of feels like Italian prog, but in English. So if you're into Italian prog and you really like the way that they use creativity in their music, this might be very akin to that. And come to think of it, I don't really think I've actually ever heard an English prog album be so similar to Italian prog, because Italian prog always seemed to be in its tiny bubble, but as it seems, these guys were creating something which is really experimental and, audacious, much like Italian prog. And all I told you about this magnificent album could not have been done without the right production, without the right mixing, and without the right studio engineering. And guess who's the studio engineer on here? It's no other than Mr. Alan Parsons. All the way from Dark Side of the Moon with Pink Floyd to his own solo project, on his way he was here to help Ambrosia produce their first album, and he did a fantastic job on it. And would you be surprised if I told you that he actually was nominated for a Grammy for studio engineering on this one? And honestly, although he didn't win, I think that this one is really really noticeable. The production on here is so memorable, so great, and it really goes to contrast a lot of albums which really don't put enough effort into their production, and it really shows that your music isn't worth a lot if it has a lot of potential but isn't produced and mixed correctly. So yeah, in conclusion, despite Ambrosia being a very contemporary band nowadays, or at least back when they were active, I would still like to thank them for what they did to the progressive scene, and having this album in the catalog of prog music is just a huge blessing, and I love it to bits. This cover is a great representation of this album, just an explosion of colors, shapes, and textures. I cannot tell you for the life of me what I really see on this cover because it's so chaotic, but I would describe it as orderly chaos, which again is a great descriptor for the music on this album. Of course, you have this neat little trick that they put the Ambrosia name on the four sides of the image, thus no matter in which direction you're holding this album, you're gonna see the name, you're gonna remember the name Ambrosia, you're gonna know who these guys are, and you're not gonna forget them. And this cover just does things right. I might not like it too much on a personal level, but I do see that it really reflects the music on here, and I have a lot of appreciation towards albums that actually match the cover to the music found on the album, and this one to me is a perfect match. So as much as I stand awed at the simplistic nature of these songs, this is also where I see a bit of a downside in this album. I believe that some more, non-conformation to structures and actually going and exploring more ideas in singular songs would have been better, but still I find that this album, as I said, is a great addition to the prog catalog, and thus it will receive from me a rating of 9 out of 10. But that's about it, guys. I hope that you enjoyed this video, and stay tuned for tomorrow because we're going to be listening to Contagion by Arena. I also want to thank my lovely supporter over on Patreon, so thank you so much to Clay Walnum, you are the best, and if any of you want to support me over on Patreon, you can find the link down in the description or in my About page. But that's about it, guys. Have a wonderful day, and I'll catch you all tomorrow. Bye, guys.